Who knew that Sonic had collided with so many franchises? Hello everyone and welcome back to the Super Smash Bros. Cinematic Universe box office records. And even though this is the mid-season finale, we're going to have a lot of fun today. Because we actually have some news to report. Because it's official, Pokemon Day is coming next week. Dropping at 6 a.m. PST. That means Pacific Standard Time. We also have the director for Street Fighter, Kitao Sakurai. Personally, I find it a very strange choice because his only directing jobs are Aardvark, The Passage, and Bad Trip. And those are a crime thriller and a comedy hidden camera film. Also, one is a short film. Not sure what Capcom's idea is here. Then again, I've never seen his films to really make my own assessment first. Then again, this could be like a West Ball type situation where we can see their vision in their works. I'll come back to you on that. Well, for the last time this season, let's take a look at domestic. And our current final total is $239,289,000. Like I said, we're not going to escape 230 in domestic. But international is a totally different story. Because we have $248 million. Even. Short and sweet and to the point. Which means worldwide is a grand total of $479,044,296. And that's how much it will stay until April. But we will be back to see the official total by then. Yeah, I'm throwing in the towel, folks. It's all Disney and Paramount's fault. There is no sugarcoating it. So then, let's take a look at episode 15 of Secret Level. And then we will be back to announce what's coming up next for this channel. Oh, and by the way, this is a special extended episode. Get ready. Because starting today, you get to witness the first episode of Super Smash Bros. History. We have seemed to encounter the result of an all-star blunder. Episode 15 gives us the odd situation where the focus is not a franchise, but a brand itself. The Sony PlayStation. But that puts us into a very strange position where we have to introduce Yeah, it's time. If you're going to talk about the Sony PlayStation, Nintendo is also involved. So we're going to the very beginning of when Sony was new. Trust me, this is going to take a while. On May 7th of 1946, Akio Morita the Jr., aka the Marketing Sense, was inspired to tinker because of the American phonograph, and also the 15th generation of a sake empire, and Masaru Ibuka the Senior, aka the Dreamer, two engineers from the war effort, whose lives were saved because of their vocation. After hearing the Emperor's voice for the first time on the radio, where he surrendered to the United States, is how those two engineers founded Sony, deep within the Nihonbashi district of Tokyo, Japan, in the aftermath of World War II. Now, just so you know, this was the point in history where the United States was king in terms of technology. Using a capital of $527 with just a 7-man staff, they put their first product on the market, a rice cooker. Because remember, Morita was born out of a sake business and wanted to capitalize on what he knew, which was rice. You know, that company we now know as Sony, well, back then it was known as Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering Corporation, or Tatsuko. The sad thing is, their rice cooker never took off, but they found another business, in repairing vacuum tube radios and other electrical equipment. However, when they did repair jobs for the Japanese radio broadcaster NHK, they had to be approved by the U.S. Army of Occupation. Then in 1950, the company put out their second product, a tape recorder. That also never took off. But not all was lost, as in 1952, Ibuka traveled to the United States, visiting Bell Laboratories, Western Electric Company, and the manufacturing arm of American Telephone and Telegraph, aka AT&T, to put a plan in motion to license the transistor. In 1953, Morita managed to sign the deal with Western Electric. This particular watershed agreement led to their product, the transistor radio. However, Texas Instruments Incorporated had beat them to the punch in 1955 with the Regency transistor radio. But that didn't stop Tatsuko, no. Because in 1957, it was their TR-63, an inexpensive, shirt pocket-sized, all-transistor radio that took the world by storm. Because of that success, that inspired them to change the name from Tatsuko to Sony in January of 1958, taking the Latin word sonus, meaning sound, and the term sunny, and turning it into a name that is more internationally appealing. By 1960, their business in the United States had prompted them to create Sony Corporation of America with their headquarters in New York City. When their company opened their store on 5th Avenue in 1962, it unfurled the first Japanese flag to be flown in the United States since the beginning of World War II. Then, at the 1964 New York World's Fair, they introduced the MD5, the first all-transistor desktop calculator. Then by 1968, they shipped their first Trinitron color television. By 1971, 40% of Japanese households had color television sets. So Sony introduced the first color video set recorder, VCR, which led to the introduction of the Betamax in 1975. Oh boy, people loved that thing. Though in a sad twist of fate, even though the Betamax was clearly the better product, it was more expensive. The VHS won in the end, aka the Video Home System. With video companies choosing affordability over quality, Sony eventually caved and made their own VHS player. Then in 1979 was the introduction of the Sony Walkman. This was a product that was near and dear to Morita's heart. That if said product failed, he would resign. Lucky for him, it took off. Then in 1982, the first compact disc player emerged, thanks to a unique development agreement between Sony and Dutch manufacturer Philips Electronics.
How ironic.
Sony supplied the pulse code modulation technology, aka turning analog signals into digital signals, and combined it with the laser system by Philips. Then in 1983, Sony developed the first camcorder, the Betamovie BMC 100P, which used Betamax cassettes, of course. That same year, JVC revealed their first camcorder that used VHS-C. Then in 1984, Kodak released their camcorder, which used the 8mm format. Speaking of entertainment, then President and Chairman of Sony Corporation of America, Norio Oga, aka the father of the CD, who wanted to add entertainment content to Sony's operations, bought CBS Records Group in 1988. Then in 1989, they bought Columbia Pictures for $3.4 billion, being the largest American company owned by a Japanese firm at the time. However, in 1988 was when Sony and Nintendo started working together on the sound chip for the Super Famicom, aka the SDSP or Digital Signal Processor, that was used to output data to the speakers, which allowed the console to be capable of stereo sound with 8 voices generated using 16-bit audio samples, and could apply effects like an echo. The Super Famicom or the Super Nintendo had an audio system called the SHVC sound module, which also included a Sony sub-CPU, audio RAM, a 16-bit stereo DAC, and a stereo amplifier. Then in 1990, their partnership deepened. A joint venture that was announced publicly to create a CD add-on for the Super Nintendo. This was a 32-bit add-on. But who was responsible for all of this? The Sony engineer Ken Kutaragi, who took on a contract at Sony because he saw his daughters love the Famicom to develop the audio chip for the Super Nintendo, secretly developing the chip, the Sony SPC 700, back when Sony was uninterested in the video game business. However, Kutaragi found support in the American president of Sony, Norio Oga, and the project was allowed to continue. You see, Kutaragi believed that CD-ROMs would overtake cartridges and would propose a CD-ROM drive for the Super Nintendo. However, Nintendo disagreed, believing that CD-ROMs were too slow, but allowed Sony to design the add-on after Kutaragi claimed the drive would be used for everything but games. The result of the deal would be a CD-ROM add-on for the Super Nintendo, as well as a Sony-branded console called the PlayStation, that would also play the Super Nintendo cartridges and Super Disc games. The Super Disc was a format made specifically for this add-on. During development in late 1988, Sony would develop and retain control over this format, with Nintendo thus effectively ceding a large amount of control of software licensing to Sony. Furthermore, Sony would also be the sole benefactor of licensing related to music and movie software that it had been aggressively pursuing as a secondary application. However, the then president of Nintendo at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, was getting very wary of Sony, as they were the sole proprietor of the SSMP audio chip in the Super Nintendo and required developers to buy its expensive and proprietary audio development tool. At this point, Nintendo had grown suspicious of Sony's growth because of the audio chip, the hybrid console, and Norio Oga's buying of companies. Nintendo thought that Sony was getting too big for its britches, suspecting they had become a prop in their console ambitions. So, in the most cowardly and traitorous of moves, on June 1991 at the Consumer Electronics Show, they announced they were going to work with Philips instead. And this was just a single day after Nintendo said themselves they'd be partnering with Sony to make the PlayStation. Yeah, Nintendo chose to partner with the same company that gave Sony the laser technology for their CD-ROM players, which led to the era of the Philips CDI, which came out in 1990, a machine that Sony still had a hand in creating. Then enter into the mix. On December 12th of 1991, the Sega CD debuted as an add-on for the Genesis. It had its fair share of good games, like Sonic CD, Lunar Silver Star, Fruitful Mail, and Snatcher, but it had a high price tag, which would inflate to $692 today. That's worse than
$599 US.
After a combination of those particular factors, the add-on failed, which led to Nintendo dissolving their partnership with Philips, but allowing them to make masterpieces like this.
Oh boy, I'm so hungry I could eat an Octorok.
The breaking of Nintendo with Philips infuriated Oga, tasking Kutaragi to get started on that PlayStation project. But Nintendo and Sony wanted to still have a partnership, wanting a non-gaming role. But Kutaragi said no, as he had dealt with way too much humiliation from Nintendo. So the negotiations ended on May of 1992, where Sony had a meeting in June to discuss the project. At that meeting, it consisted of Oga, Kutaragi, and several senior members of Sony's board, where Kutaragi unveiled a proprietary CD-ROM-based system he had been working on in secret, which involved playing video games with 3D graphics to the board. Despite the fact that Oga retained the existence of the project, there was a massive opposition from the rest of the senior members. So Kutaragi and his team had to be moved to Sony Music, which was a completely separate financial entity from the company. They also had to retain their relationship with Philips because of the MMCD development project, which turned into the DVD. Then, in October of 1993, Virtua Fighter came to the arcades. A game by Sega that became a massive hit, bringing back morale to Kutaragi and the rest of his team, because during development, there was uncertainty on whether the console should focus on 2D sprites or 3D polygon graphics. That game changed everything. There was also a silver lining by being shoved into Sony Music. He developed a partnership with the CEO, Shigeo Maruyama, along with Akira Sato, to create Sony Computer Entertainment, which allowed the company to gather creatives while also developing CDs. This is when they were hard at work on PlayStation's controller, the iconic original model of the SCPH-1010, which was, of course, based off the Super Nintendo's controller. But they decided to add a second set of shoulder buttons for the middle fingers. Having two sets of shoulder buttons allowed the player to implement two-way directional depth controls using the two sets of buttons. However, to compensate for the less stable grip from shifting the middle finger's placement to the shoulders, grip handles were added to the controller. Now, how about those iconic buttons? That was a decision made by the creator of the controller itself, Teyu Goto. He decided instead of using letters that he would use geometric shapes, specifically ones that have another meaning in Japanese culture. In the end, he decided on a green triangle, a red circle, a blue cross, and a pink square. He interpreted the cross as yes and the circle as no. The green triangle was about a point of view, and the square was about getting to a main menu. However, depending on the game's developer, these symbols were enigmatic enough to be interchangeable. Then finally, in 1993, the execs at Sony gave in and greenlit the PlayStation project, after the console was already years into development. Then on December 3rd of 1994, the console hit the market. So thanks to Nintendo's arrogance and Sega's stupidity, we have the Sony PlayStation. Sony, as a company, is only second in market cap when it comes to Japanese companies after Toyota. The largest video game publisher in the world, and have the third largest film company. Gee, I wonder which ones are the first two. And currently, Sony has 5 console generations on its belt. And that was just the console. We have yet to talk about the franchises in the episode. And that was just part 1 of episode 15. There really is. So I'm gonna be pretty busy until April. Hold tight, stay tuned. And when that is done, we'll be back to AKA the continuation of Grapes, then we'll have the Mango. Oh, it's gonna be a lot of fun, especially for you Zelda fans. Now let's see what's coming up next, in terms of films and shows, I mean. Well, we definitely got a change, but it's not to the schedule. We still have a Minecraft movie coming out April 4th for this year by Warner Brothers. We still have Street Fighter coming out March 20th by 2026 by Sony and Legendary. We still have the Super Mario Bros. Movie 2 coming out April 3rd of 2026 by Universal Illumination. We still have Sonic the Hedgehog 4 coming out March 19th of 2027 by Paramount and Skydance. And we still have Secret Level Season 2 coming out, but we don't know the date. I'm still hoping for April of this year by Amazon Prime, please! We don't know when Metal Gear Solid is coming out by Sony, but we do know that The Legend of Zelda has a very wide release window of 2025 to 2029. I don't care, I want an exact release date. I am begging the Pokemon Company to show us something for Detective Pikachu 2, or at least show us a movie to fill in that spot. Come on, Thursday! Come on! Waiting for an entire year has been torture! At least they greenlit another season for Pokemon Concierge. At least! I don't know. Should I include Pokemon Concierge in this list? I mean, it's a TV show, but it's not exactly cinematic. It's just cute. I mean, if that project with Pokemon and Aardman is a movie, I guess I could include it, but... But let's be realistic here. Do you see anything stop motion leading to a Smash Brothers movie by any chance? I don't think so. We just need more information. That's it. We just need more information from Pokemon Day. We could be speculating until the milk tank come home. But seriously, we just need more information. Pokemon Company, stop holding it back from us. Please! You people have driven me crazy! Second place for the film that has driven me nuts goes to the Mega Man movie by Netflix. We have not gotten anything for news on this film for 2 years. I seriously have no idea what's going on at Capcom. They are a question mark to me, completely and utterly. Same thing as Bandai Namco. They care more about Tamagotchi. They care more about their spin-offs than they do about freaking Pac-Man. Seriously. I mean, does Fox still exist as a company? I mean, last year we had Planet of the Apes and we had Deadpool, but that's really it. Bob really screwed up everything. We still have to wait for Pokemon Day for the live-action Pokemon series featuring Red, and we don't know a thing about the Minecraft show on Netflix either. Honestly, I have been using these videos as a form of therapy. Also, expect a review of Castlevania Nocturne Season 2 on the second mid-season premiere. And we are done. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe, and smash that bell in order to get notifications on the channel where everything grows on you.